No mai, whakatau mai e hoa ma, and welcome to this virtual launch event to celebrate Steph Matuku's new young adults book, Falling into Rarohenga. E mihi kawana ki ngā kai kōrero o te rā nei, ki ngā kai whakarongo kua whakapiri mai e huirangi nei, hei whakamanawa I tēnei pukapuka, ko whakarara me rangiuru ngā maunga, ko mā tātua me te aroa ngā waka, ko mātauri te moana I te taitokero, ko kaituna te awa I te rohe whenua o te aroa, ko ngā puhi me tapuika ngā iwi, ko Ataria Sharman tōku ingoa, and I'll be the host for our kōrero today. We're going to talk about Steph's book, Falling into Rarohenga. And the importance of Māori mythology and storytelling, how we can empower our young people and keep our legends alive. So first of all, let me introduce our kai kōrero. And they do have quite comprehensive bios, so I'll try to get, just try to get through this. So obviously, Steph, the writer of Falling into Rarohenga, she's from Taranaki, Ngāti Mutunga, Ngāti Tama, and Te Aotearoa a her iwi. She's an award-winning freelance writer who likes to write stories for young people for the page, stage, and the screen. Most recently, she worked on the CBBC TV series Mystic, which is super cool, and completed a residency at the Michael King Writers Centre writing a YA novel about post-apocalyptic climate change. Her first two novels, Fight of the Fantail and Whiti Hereaka and the Magician, were Storyline's notable books, and Whiti was a finalist at the New Zealand Book Awards for children and young adults. Falling into Rarohenga is her third book with Huia Publishers. Woo, Steph.
Woo, yeah.
And then we've got Whiti Hereaka. Ngāti Tūparu tō te aroa. She's a playwright, novelist, screenwriter, barrister, and solicitor. So you've got two sides there. She holds a master's in creative writing from the International Institute of Modern Letters. She's also a trustee of the Māori Literature Trust. Her second novel, Bugs, won heaps of awards, so many awards, I won't go through all of them. And then her third novel, Legacy, won the award for Best Young Adult Fiction at the 2019 New Zealand Book Awards. And currently, Whiti is working on her new novel, Tuku, based on the story of Hatupatu and the Bird Woman, which will be really cool to hear about that today. Steph? And then we got Cassie Hart, Nai Tahu. She's a writer of speculative fiction. Her short stories have appeared in several award-winning anthologies. She's been a finalist for the Sir Julius Vogel Australian Shadow and Hugo Awards, and she's self-published over 10 novels and novellas under her writing names of Nova Blake and JC Hart. And in 2018, she was selected as a writer on the Te Papatupu writing program. A fan of coffee, cats, and zombies. Me too, Cassie. She also lives in Taranaki. So, awesome, yay! Those are our kai kōrero for today. So on that note, I'll stop talking. It's time for me to hand you over to our first kai kōrero, Te Kaituhi, or Falling into Rarohenga, Steph Matuku, who will introduce you to the book and also talk to us about her process of writing it.
Well, kia ora everybody, and thank you, Ataria. That was lovely. And thanks, girls, for coming along. It's really nice to see you. Whiti, you're very bling today, which I really appreciate. Thank you so much. Falling into Rarohenga is a story about Tui and Kai, who are siblings, who get drawn down into the Māori underworld on a quest. It's really hard to talk about it without giving away spoilers, but suffice to say that they travel through the underworld and they have to sort of fight demons and their own selves and overcome this battle between each other because, you know, they're siblings, they don't get along often. I'm really happy that it's made it into the public sphere because it's been such a long time in writing. I first put pen to paper probably about 6 years ago. I was going through a bit of a tough time in my life and I just wanted to write this adventure story. You know, I wanted to be taken out of my humdrum boringness and, you know, go on an adventure in a different land. And so I started writing it as a film script. and wrote it up. I sent it off to the New Zealand Writers Guild to see if I could get funding with their seed funding program, and I failed, but I applied again the next year and I got through, and I was assigned a mentor, Hone Koka, and I have to really big ups to Hone for helping me through the process of writing the script. When he read it, he first said to me, his first question was, why are you writing this? Who are you writing this for? What does it mean? You know, all these questions, like, why did you put twins in it? And I'd never really thought about it. I just sort of, you know, like I like to read to entertain, and I feel like I'm quite a light person myself, you know, kind of superficial. So I was just writing just for fun. I was just writing for fun, but he started asking these really deep questions. And then I was like, why did I write it as twins? And then I suddenly thought, well, you know, they're two sides of the same coin, aren't they? You know, and in that way you can write them with two very different personalities that kind of gel together. And in that same way, the Rarohenga is like the opposite side of the coin to Te Ao Marama. So it all kind of fell together, but he really helped me sort of answer some deep questions. And once I'd gone through that process, I ripped up that script and completely rewrote it and came out with something that I was really happy with. And I feel like I'm going on and on and on. Is that okay?
You're fine. You're good.
Oh, yeah. So I sent it off to a bunch of producers and I was really excited about it. And I just got crickets back, like nobody cared, nobody gave a toss. And I was like, ugh. And so I had a meeting with the film commission and I said, what can I do, you know? And they said, well, you're a novelist, why don't you write it as a novel? And I was like, I have just spent X number of months writing this. There's no way I'm going to write it as a book. That's the dumbest idea. So I threw the script in a drawer and forgot about it for about a year. And then I was a little bit bored one day. I thought, maybe I should write it up as a book. And so I did. And because everything was there, like the characters were there, the story was there, the art was there, it was so easy. And I literally knocked it up in about a month. So it was the fastest thing I've ever written. Yeah. And finally, here it is. And everybody gets to see the story. So.
I left mine in the other, mine's by my bed where I was reading it.
So yeah, that's the process of how it got written. So yeah, I guess the whole the theme behind that is that if your story doesn't work in one format, then you can always write it as another, you know, like there's so many novels that have been written from short stories and from songs and stuff. Yeah.
Were there any challenges, Steph, with taking what was a play and moving that into a fiction novel, like, because you would have had dialogue and where the characters were, but did you have to spend that month, was that all building in that background?
Yeah, it was mostly writing up the description, because when you write a script, you can just write a forest, you know, and then you just leave that up to somebody else to, you know, make the forest. But in a book, you have to actually describe the forest. Is it a light, happy forest? Is it a dark, mysterious forest? You know, are there ferns? Are there elms? I don't know what an elm is, but you know what I mean. So most of it was just based first on how I was going to tell it, like who was going to be telling the story. And then I realized, well, they're twins, clearly they both have to tell the story. And yeah, just the descriptions really, but everything else was there, the dialogue, and yeah, so it was really nice. But I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Would you recommend it as a process, writing the script first?
Yeah, if you've got time on your hands. Yeah. I tend to do that though. I sort of write as a process of elimination. So I'll write it and then go, this doesn't work. So I know not to write it that way. And then I'll approach it from a different way. Like it's clearly not efficient, but it seems to work for me eventually.
I mean, you said it took you a month to write and it was the fastest thing that you've written. But really, it took you those years to figure out the story of it. So you already had the heart of it. This was just putting it into a different form. And I like hearing you talk about Hone and working with him, because I have done that too. And yeah, he really does go for those questions about why you're writing this and why are you writing this now. And I think that depth of thought does shine through in the novel, Steph. I know you said you're shallow, but no. Yeah, I think the novel does show how much work you've put into these characters and the relationships with the characters. So yeah, I think the time you spent on that script shines through in this novel, and I do hope the script gets picked up as well as
that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
That'd have been for a great movie.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think it's a book like this really shows, you know, how like seem like easy flowing writing, like the pace of it and the way it all just kind of flows. That doesn't happen like every time you write a thing. That shows all the time and effort and energy put into it when a person can read the book and just be completely swept away by it. Like, it's a real credit to your writing skills, I reckon.
Oh, thank you. You know, one day when I was working on that, I knocked out 12,000 words in one day. That's huge. I've never, ever done that before. I will never do that again. And I was
well, you might if you spend a couple years writing another script that you turn into a movie, into a novel. Maybe.
I don't have a lot of time left on this earth. I mean, I don't know.
So, oh, sorry, Steph, you go. Yeah, so we've basically touched on it already, but Cassie and Whiti, I'd love to hear from you. What were your reactions while you were reading Falling into Rarohenga?
I really loved the quest aspect of it. Yeah, I fell into Rarohenga as much as the twins did, and I really, really loved how you used your structure. This is going to sound really teachery, but I really enjoyed how you used the structure of the twins, of each telling their own story and each chapter alternating between the two characters. And I thought that showed, well, first of all, I'm interested in how stories are told from lots of different points of view. Like, every story that can be told from different points of view. So that's kind of right up my alley of interest. But I think it showed the actual their relationship really beautifully without you spelling things out for us, which I found really exciting. And I just loved the parts where they were just so brother and sister, I think I'm trying to find that part where Tui loses her memory. She doesn't recognize her brother, but she still is a know-it-all, and and he just, what does she say? Can't remember nothing, but still knows everything. Just encapsulated their relationship so well. And I find that with all of your work, though, Steph, that you portray particularly young people with such sensitivity. Sounds like sensitivity, but you feel like these characters are actual kids, actual teenagers with their own way of navigating the world and their own emphasis on the important parts of their relationship. So I just really enjoyed the very sibling-y aspect of it, I think, the most. But yeah, I consumed it in a day because I was just swept away with the story, and that doesn't usually happen very often with me anymore, because I'm always kind of trying to pick apart how a book works. So yes, it's a rare treat when I get swept away in a novel, and this one did it for me. So.
Oh, thank God. When you spend a lot of time on something and you're just so nervous about how, what their reaction's going to be. And I'm so glad you said that, Whiti. That's really nice. I'm hearing all this for the first time as well. So it's really quite cool. When you were saying about portraying the teenageness really well, thank you. But I was at this festival thing with a whole bunch of children's writers, and we were all talking about how children's writers their brains seem to stop at the age that they tend to write at, their mental age and their emotional age. So mine, I think, is about 14. I think I must have peaked at 14. because I do love 14-year-olds, you know, they're so like very grown up and yet still, you know, don't have the experience of life, but still are quite knowing. You know
and
what
I think
mean?
you're very compassionate with that age. And I think it's easy for a jaded adult to go, to be a bit cynical when they're portraying young people in a way that, like, the kind of knowing, oh, they don't really know what's going on. I mean, you have a little bit of that. I mean, we have a little bit of that irony reading it, as I do as an adult, going, oh, give it a few more years, kids, calm down. But you don't feel that way. You don't feel like you're being, I don't feel that you as a writer are being condescending to that age. Like, those concerns are important to 14-year-olds and you honor that. And I think that's really hard to do. And yeah, so congratulations.
So often with young adult, the characters, you know, they're age 16, but they're not acting or responding in the way that a 16-year-old would. I have a 16-year-old, so I know. But you know, it's I think in your books, your teenagers definitely feel like they're actually of that age, not older, but just put down into a younger category. Which I really appreciate. I loved how quickly it flowed, and the chapters are nice and short. But that's tricky because then you're like, oh, I'll just read one more chapter, and you're like, it didn't take me long, I can just read another one. And then before you know it, you've read a quarter of the book and you're like, oh crap, I should cook dinner. I did have that feeling one night. I was like, damn it, everything's gonna burn if I don't put this down. I really like this, the sibling relationship, the dynamic, and the way that changed over the course of the book as well. Because so often we have like our interior lives that we don't, even if you're living with someone, they don't necessarily see that, and it's not, they didn't have any deep and meaningful conversations about it because teenagers don't typically do that with their siblings. But it was nice to watch their understanding of their sibling grow and change over the course as their over the course of the quest, as their interior strengths were pulled out to face the challenges that happened in the book. So I thought it was really, really well done.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, this is just a love fest.
That's what it's
Yeah, so for me as well, Steph, I started reading it in the morning with breakfast, and then I binge read it like in a couple of hours. No, half a day, but I didn't put it down. I was just immersed, and I think particularly at the start, I like how quickly you got into the action of it with things happening really fast, and then I was like, oh well, now I can't put it down. I want to find out what's happened to the characters. So that was really awesome. One of the things I loved as well was seeing some of our atua Māori portrayed so beautifully. So one of the questions that I've got for you guys is, in terms of Māori mythology, is it okay to reframe mythology for our own purposes?
Well, I always thought that, you know, our myths, and it's weird calling them myths because myths sort of denotes fairy tales and, you know, things that didn't happen, whereas, you know, our mythology is incorporated into our tikanga. It's incorporated into everyday life. So where was I going with this? I can't remember. Whiti, you say something and then I'll come.
So when I was working on Pirako, I was talking to Ataria Taylor, and he very wisely, because he's a very wise man, said that Pirako are our histories. They're not the way that we've kind of been colonized into thinking that the mythologies doesn't do them justice. These people in the stories, the atua, are our tipuna. So it's part of our whakapapa, these stories. And I think it is really important to reframe our Pirako, our atua, for our lives now, because it's not a static thing. These stories inform how we live our lives now. Like Steph said, it's the basis of our tikanga. It's the basis of how we live and I guess navigate our way through this world. So I think, it is really important to to mold, I guess, these stories to a purpose that serves us now as well. Like I was saying before about the multiplicities of stories, that doesn't mean that this replaces the kind of traditional story. It is an aspect of that story. So yeah, I think that's a healthy way for a culture to live. We are not like stuck 5 centuries ago. We use these stories now. Stories are important to us and important to how we identify as people. So, and I must say, in this, and falling into Rarohenga, I really love, I really loved Tawhiri being like the god of like wind, all types of wind. I'm not gonna spoil it. I loved that part so much.
Hilarious. Yeah,
it was so funny. Yeah, I think I read it several times because I just couldn't stop laughing. So yeah, look out for that when you're reading it. But yeah, I think yeah, it's really important to bring these stories to now, as well as honoring where they were in the past. Yeah.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this question because some of the first books I self-published were my Kotahi Bay series, and they are, the main characters are children of the Atua, and it was a way for me. At the time I was like freaking out about doing it wrong, which is a thing lots of Māori authors have to deal with at some point in time. But for me, it was a way to learn. So I got to do lots of research and learn about the Atua, and then also a way for me to reconnect with them and bring them into relevancy in my life. And when you think about it, there's so many different versions of all of our legends, different areas of the country, different iwi, we all have different takes on it. And so I think it's good that we make them our own and keep growing and evolving them over time, because we are a culture that evolves and grows and changes, and we can see that in tikanga changing on different marae, or different areas. I know that my tahu have done quite a lot of thinking about what makes sense in this world that we live in now, rather than clinging to what happened centuries ago. How do we live in this world now? What makes the most sense for us? So yeah, I think it's a good thing to keep coming back to those stories and keep growing them. Yeah, but as you said, Whiti, not losing sight of where they came from as well. Yeah.
I remembered my point now. So I'd always sort of grown up thinking that these stories were sacred, and that you couldn't really mess with them because it would be, tapu and you get struck down by lightning or whatever. And then I read a story by Ngā Hui Te Awa Kōtuku about Rona. And the story of Rona goes that Rona is kind of a harassed, annoyed mother, doing stuff for her children. And she ends up swearing at the moon, and the moon comes down and takes her away forever. And in Ngā Hui's story, the moon was a spaceship. So the whole thing was an alien abduction, and that blew my mind. It was like, oh my gosh, you can change a story, you can play with it, and you can have fun with it, and it's okay. And it's a sign of respect, I think, if you do it in the right way from within yourself. Yeah, it's okay. And we're so lucky to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I think some of the fear comes because our access to parako has been severely limited, and punished at times. So yeah, when you're under stress, you want to cling on to things as they were. So I think this kind of us playing with these stories is a sign that our culture is healing a little bit, and that we're getting into a more healthy place, that we can interrogate our own sort of I don't want to say mythologies, our own histories, and figure out where we are now. So yeah, it makes me excited that more Māori writers are doing this. Yeah, and thinking about, I was talking in a class recently about magical realism and how, like, in criticism, we think of magical realism as this kind of weird fantasy, blah, blah, blah space. But for me, magical realism is just how people in South America and Māori, that's how we view the world. Like there's not this hard, I guess, border between what is real and what is fantasy. We live with magic every day, and we recognize that. So yeah, I think that we're, as a canon, I guess, of Māori literature, we're heading into a really exciting place where we can explore genre and kind of permeate through those weird Pākehā delineations of what literature should be.
Yeah, and moving away from that real Western high fantasy, you know, with the orcs and the trolls and the, you know,
I mean, we can have that here. We've got so many characters that could fill those kind of Western.
And you demonstrate that in your book too, with the Ponaturi, rather than, and he keeps wanting to call them mermaids, but they're not mermaids. Like,
no such thing as mermaids.
So it's the whole, we have our own versions of creatures that are like other creatures but are ours, and there's plenty to play with in that sphere for sure.
Actually, that was something I wanted to ask you, Steph. Quite a few of the characters I hadn't heard of Ponaturi before. So where did some of these inspirations, or where did you hear these characters, these pūrākau, these autupuna?
I did a lot of research. So I talked to people and I went online, and I have a lot of books. So I just picked up on one and melded it a little and made it a little bit my own. So but I mean, everything comes from something, you know.
That's very cool. And so Hine Kōruru, she's in Falling Into Rarohenga, the goddess of shadows. So can you tell me a bit about her, Steph, and how she came to be in the puka puka?
Well, you need a antagonist, don't you? I mean, you need someone who's the antithesis of who's trying to prevent the twins from doing what they're doing. But I don't really like the idea of characters that are all one thing. Like, I don't like all good characters and I don't like all bad characters. And so I wanted to make her shades of grey, like shadows, you know. And I made her up. She doesn't exist, although she might exist. You never know.
Maybe she does now.
Well, she exists for all of us now. So
we called her into being.
Wow.
But I just like the idea of her, you know. She's very cool, and she's got hair that flows back in the breeze, even when there's no breeze. And she dresses really well, and she's beautiful but deadly, you know.
Yeah, I loved her.
I love that character too. Yeah. Trying to like live up to her a little bit, but not quite.
You're doing well. Yeah, you're doing
evolution.
Cosplay.
Yeah. And I mean,
that's like the ultimate, isn't it? Having someone cosplay your characters.
Yeah.
I think that's got to be right up there with biggest compliments.
So, Whiti, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your upcoming novel. So it's based around the pūrākau, Hatupatu, and the bird woman, with our tupua kurangai tuku. How was it interacting with her in that space, and what inspired you to get into that story?
Oh wow, that's a long story, but I'll try and make it short. So grew up in Taupo, had family in Rotorua, so we always travelled between Taupo and Rotorua, and we always went the Atamuri way. So we stopped off at Hatupatu's Rock and gave koha, as you do. But so pretty much every other weekend I heard the pūrākau about Hatupatu and the bird woman. But a hoha. It was a hoha. So yeah, I always asked about kurangaituku and why did she do that and what was happening. So that was something that I've carried with me since I was like a wee young lass. And a long time ago, maybe a decade ago, so much like Steph, I've been working on this novel for a very long time.
You have.
It's finally come to
I'm
fruition.
so excited for it.
Yay! I know. I think I was probably talking about it when I first met you. So it's been a long time. So yeah, I thought I'd read all these other novels that were coming out like 10 or so years ago, like Wicked and even American Gods, where authors were looking at familiar stories but from a different point of view. So in Wicked, it's the Wicked Witch of the West's point of view, and I thought I could do that. So yeah, started writing about kurangaituku, and it's really funny. I guess synchronicity that you know, Steph and I are both writing about Rarohenga, and the books are coming out in the same year, which is kind of weird synchronicity.
It's lovely. It's great.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's cool. So in my novel, we're with kurangaituku pretty much from Te Kore. So it starts off in Te Kore, and it ends with the eruption of Tarawera in the 1800s. But the book is kind of split into 3 parts. So the first part is in Te Ao Marama, and that's where she meets Hatipatu and the world, and they start their relationship. And then halfway through, she dies. That's not a spoiler because she dies in every story. And then we follow her through Rarohenga. So yeah, it was kind of nice reading Steph's version of Rarohenga, and thinking, yeah, there are parts that are similar and quite different too. But like I was saying before, I like that. I think, actually, I do say that in my novel. I say that Rarohenga is a place that's made up of imagination, of the people who believe in it, in their imagination. So it's a place of flux. So it can change as people's conception of Rarohenga changes. So I don't think they're competing. Like, I don't think my telling of Rarohenga is competing with Steph's in any way. I think they complement each other. I think they're strands of awesome. A rope. So we each have our little strand, and Rarohenga is made up of all these strands, not just me and Steph. It's me, Steph, and whoever else is writing Rarohenga or is telling the Rarohenga. Those parts are coming together. So yeah, that was really exciting for me to find this kind of synchronicity between our work.
The cool thing about writing about Rarohenga is that no one's going to say, well, that's not right.
Yeah. How do you know? You do.
Yeah.
It's so true. Well, you haven't been there, so
Yeah.
Who knows? So yeah, I really like that aspect, that it's exciting for me to share this space of, I guess, retelling myths, retelling Purako. Yeah, exciting.
Yay. And Cassie's got a book out too.
She does.
Yeah, a couple of weeks now. Yep. Do I have to talk about it? I better get used to doing that, huh?
Yeah.
My book is called Butcherbird, and it's set at the foot of Mount Taranaki, which is where I grew up. It's set on a fictional version of my grandparents' farm, actually. Yeah, so it's about family and family secrets, because I love those things. And I don't know, how do I describe it? I don't have anywhere near the kind of mythology and it's not as obviously Māori as there goes that better footy. not as overtly Māori as Whiti and Steph's books, or Ataria's either. So, but it's definitely built into the fabric of it, because I think it's impossible not to write that way when this is who you are. It's something I've been learning over the last couple of years, is how similar and yet how different Māori worldview is to like traditional, like regular Western storytelling, and some of the things that we write about that other people might not think about writing about, has always been, is quite interesting to me at the moment, and I'm looking forward to exploring that more in the future. But yes, my book is about a woman who goes home to the farm after she's been basically banished from it when her family burned to death in the barn, and she wants to go back and find out what happens. And there are birds and a skull and a swamp, and basically I just made a list of all the things I thought I would love to write about, and then I wrote about them. Because that's a great way to write a book. Just go, what will tickle my fancy? And I got to put in lots of bits of things that actually happened. We did have swamps on the farm, and we did tie knots in the reeds to make portals in the swamp, and just things like that. So it's a very personal book. It's definitely not my family. Disclaimer. Disclaimer. This book is not about anybody I know, even though it's very personally woven in with where I grew up and who I am as a person. So I am very excited to have it out in the world, and also slightly terrified, but that's okay.
And I think it is, I'm going to contradict you a little bit, Cassie. I think it is very deeply rooted in Te Ao Māori. I keep saying this to you, and I will keep saying it to you. Like I was saying before, it is our worldview, and you picked up on that, and you can't escape from that. And the story is very based in where it is set. Like, I don't think it can be set anywhere else than where you've set it, because that's so important too. Like, the story is to that space. And also it's full of tohu that people ignore at their peril. So
I think it's hard sometimes to look at your work and go and pick out the bits, because it's not really the bits, it's kind of the foundation of it all. So I think for a lot of people who read it from a Western viewpoint might not pick up on that aspect, but it's definitely there. You can't pull that out of who you are and what you write.
But I reckon that means it's just an extra kind of treat, an Easter egg for Māori readers.
Could be, hopefully. That'd be cool.
And Ataria's book too.
Not too far away now.
God, we're overachieving, aren't we? Aren't we just so?
So actually, Steph, when I was reading yours, I was like, we must be connected to the same te kore, because there were just some parts that were like even one of the characters in mine is called Kai, and then one of the characters in yours is called Kai. So
no way.
and it's a brother and a sister, but they're not twins. So but it's super cool. Like what Whiti was saying, it's about multiplicity of perspectives and pura and reframing, all from our own slightly different way of seeing that world, Te Ao Wairua, whether it's Te Ao Wairua or Rarohenga. So mine, brother and sister, and the brother's kidnapped and they go into the spiritual world. So in my book, I haven't really, they don't go into Rarohenga. So I don't know I'm not sure the logistics of the different spaces in Te Ao Wairua, but and there are atua in that as well. Some of our atua wahine, Hina Te Iwa Iwa and Mahuika. So that's really cool. And I wrote it to be the book that I would have liked to read. When I was a kid, I would have really liked to read this particular book, and it's got a lot of the things I like in it. So it's got battles, and they learn, how to use weapons, and it's quite, I guess, a little bit anime-ish, but I'm a big fan of anime. So so that's a little bit about that.
I can't wait to read it. I think it's really important to write about what you're interested in and what you love. Like I do a lot of commissioned work as well, and it's work that I get paid to do, but I don't love it, and you can really tell you
Yeah.
can tell in the writing of it, even though, the writing is good, obviously, but it just, doesn't have the soul.
Doesn't have the same, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it helps to bring something to life and off the page when you've got that your own passion and interest for it. For the record, there's no zombies in my book.
Just a coffee and a cat.
Do you know what? There's not a cat. There is coffee. There are quite a lot of coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I found hilarious is I had years ago a friend in the States who read the book, and he was like, your characters are always having tea and coffee. Like someone comes around and then they have coffee. I'm like, that's a New Zealand thing. That's what happens.
Do they not? What?
No, not to the same extent. Like it was just really obvious in my book that the first thing people do is say, "Oh, you want a cuppa?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do that in America or whatever.
Not in the same.
If you went to someone's house, you like starve.
I don't know. I'm not sure, but it just seemed, it was really, really funny to me that some cultures in the world.
Aspect of Te Ao Māori.
So different.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
Food.
Exactly.
Offering people food and drink.
Mm.
So
it's important.
We've talked a bit about reframing our own pūrākau as those of us who are whakapapa Māori. What about writers of other cultures? Is it okay for them to take our stories and commercialise them?
I have thoughts on this.
Okay,
Tough one.
As a writer, if I want to write about a lesbian amputee Inuit who lives in Chicago, then I will write it. But as a reader, I don't want to read that. Like, it fits really well in my mind together. If I want to write it, yes, I will write it. I can write whatever I want. But, be prepared for readers to hate what you're writing.
Yeah, I say that to my students a lot. We talk about appropriation, where's the line? And it is a hard line because there are, it's a difficult space to manage, but I always say you can write whatever you want. I'm not saying you can't write things, but you need to be prepared for the blowback. You need to be prepared that people will say, we don't like this. You don't have a right. What gives you the right? And to answer that without being kind of defensive, like, it's writing, I can do whatever I like. It's like, actually think about that before you write it. But I'm not saying you can't write it. I always also say, are you taking someone else's oxygen by writing the story? I think there's a tendency for kind of some saviorism to go into writing at times, saying no one else is writing a story about blah, 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 so I will. It's like, well, actually, are you the right person to tell that story? Or are your skills better served going into that community and maybe helping those people to gain the skills to tell the story? I even get a bit about telling other iwi stories, not just my stories from where I whakapapa to. I don't think that's right for me to do that. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's a game of two halves. No, sorry. At the end of the day, I think it's a value judgment of yourself. Like, can you live with the consequences of that? Like in telling Kurangatuku's story, I don't directly whakapapa to Kurangatuku, but people do. So I'm prepared for them to like have me up about it. And yeah, I'll probably have a bit of a cry if they do, but that's on my head because I chose to do it. So I have to kind of face up to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you just said, Whiti. I mean, anyone can write whatever they want to write, but I always come back to, is that your story to tell? Yeah, and why is this a story that you want to tell? Which I think is a question that people should ask themselves before they, maybe not before they write a thing, but before they put it out into the world, because sometimes you want to write something completely, I don't know, super personal or super trashy, and you never want to share that with anyone else. You just want to write it because it's fun. And sometimes you want to write a thing because it's a thing you want to put into the world. So I think if you want to put it out in the world, asking yourself whether this is your story to tell, or as Whiti says, is this taking oxygen from somebody else? Yeah, I've come across quite a few people, some quite well liked authors who have written stories and from other people's cultures, and the way that they spoke about it made it really clear to me that they were just like, oh, that looks cool, I'm going to write about it and make money from it. And they did make money from it. And that doesn't feel respectful to me. Like, you know, I think, and then I know other writers who did their research, they talked to local iwi, and they kind of, you know, ticked all the right boxes and did their learning and did the best that they could to ensure that what they were putting out was respectful of the people who it was kind of not, you know, not about, but where the people whose story would have come from. So you know, I have a lot more respect for authors who do their work. But personally, I probably wouldn't write from other people's cultures and main characters. I think you should populate your book with characters from huge ranges of diversity, but I can't speak for them because I don't have their lived experience. So yeah, that's just what I'm comfortable with. You know, yeah, everyone's different.
And I think there's a difference when there's been centuries of the story being told, like throughout the world. So we have a lot of Greek mythology, English mythology that have been told and retold in lots and lots of different ways. And that's great. I think there's a difference between that and from where we are at the moment, where our stories have been told so seldom in recent times, that we're still kind of getting healthy. Maybe in like 500 years time, that won't be a problem because we have this breadth of story. And then, yeah, I think the tendency is when you have a well-known author telling a story not from their culture, it kind of becomes the like the accepted version of the story. And what I'm hoping, what I said before, is that we have lots of different tellings of the stories first from our point of view. So from the Te Ao Māori lens, we tell the story from different points of view, just so it's not the kind of same like elves investing of our stories. Like, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, if we are, it makes it almost more important that we are reframing these stories, because if you're reframing it completely, then it can't be the one story, because it is you've put your own spin on it, it's your own perspective. So there's no way anyone can misconstrue your conceptualization of that pūrākau as the one story because you've reframed it. Yeah. So talking about our pūrākau, are they a way to connect with the mysteries and confusion of our present day lives?
Aye. That's it.
Yeah, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think they are. I mean, at the heart of them, they're all human stories about how to navigate the world. I mean, they have atua in them, but they're very kind of human atua in a way. So yeah, I think we can use them to navigate this strange new world that has such people in it. Sorry, I didn't mean to quote Shakespeare, but it happens. I've lost my train of thought now. There we go.
All right. I think that's one of the things I really love about our culture is how approachable the atua are. You know, they're not way off in some heavenly sphere. They're here. They're present in every aspect of life. So it does mean that you can write stories about them and with them in ways that have lots of meaning for our lives. Lots of our stories, I think, revolve around relationships. I think we all quite like writing about family, which is really important, and those relationships, and not necessarily in a super conflicty way, like Western conflict stories where it's kind of a little bit forced and Sometimes, not all the time. There's lots of fantastic books. I'm not putting anything down. I'm just like, the whole, they could have talked about it. Well, characters are probably more likely to, talk about it or fight about it or gripe at each other about it in a book than ignore the problem and make it worse. I think is quite a cultural thing that comes out eventually, rather than sitting in a box. I've lost my train of thought now too. Who's doing next, Steph?
Oh, I really had nothing, but I kind of like just over the past week, this koremako has landed on my washing line and just sat there while we have breakfast, and then it flies off when breakfast is over, and I'm kind of like, that's something. Hey,
Yeah.
I don't know what
your next story.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The seed of a
Yeah.
story. See, and there'll be a parako somewhere about that, about what that talking means.
Well, that's right. And when I was at school, my house was a koremako. So what?
It's
What
all
does
coming
that mean?
together.
So spiritual.
Can't wait to see what that evolves into. Another
Steph,
10
people are
years.
going, okay, Steph, it's been a wee while. Your book's already out. What are you doing next?
Back to it.
No pressure.
Steph, when I was reading Falling into Rarohenga, I laughed out loud at a lot of times in your book. It was just really funny. And yeah, I wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about how are you so funny in your writing?
I think it's because my natural state of being is slightly melancholic. I'm not at all. I'm very even and a little bit down most of the time. So I think that's why the humor comes out, because you gotta I don't know, being depressed is funny, I guess.
Well, don't they say all comedians are slightly depressed anyway?
Yeah.
It's a coping mechanism. It's a kind of diffuses things. I think humor is a great tool to have in fiction, and your humor comes out really naturally on the page. It's not it doesn't read like the author is trying to be funny. It reads like the characters are doing things which the reader finds funny. If that makes sense.
Yeah, there's not the kind of dum dum after each of your gags. And I think you've done a really good job in that they come out from the character, and I think that it goes to the heart, it goes to how much you have worked on these characters, that their humor so well, and it's different humor for the different characters. The way Tui sees things is different from how Kai sees things, and their humor is different in that way. So how do you do that, Al?
I also think part of that is that I get bored really easily. So it's really nice to be in one character's head and then go, oh, I'm bored with this chat, and then go into somebody else, because it kind of keeps that interest up. Yeah. And also I really like writing dialogue. I worked in radio for a really, really lot, years and years and years. And we were always writing for the ear, and we were encouraged to go and listen to people's conversations on the buses and things, and just listen to how they speak to each other. And, and I think that really informed how naturalistic I like to write my dialogue. I like ums and ahs, and that's how people speak. And I like half sentences, and I love subtext, when people are saying something but they mean something else. I enjoy dialogue.
And I think your experience in script writing and in radio shows through in the dialogue like that. It is really hard to write cracking dialogue. And I think that's a skill you've obviously built up over the years, because it does come through so beautifully. I know which character is speaking without having to read said blah blah blah, I said, or whatever. Who each character is.
I did
But it's
I did do a re-edit and go
Yeah.
through all those characters, and like sometimes like Kai has a certain way of speaking, but sometimes he'd slip into Tui's rhythm, so I'd have to rewrite that sentence to sound more like Kai. Yeah, went through a lot of edits.
Yeah, and that's a lot of work. I mean, I love that you say that they each have a different rhythm, because people speak in very distinctive kind of patterns, and because I think you set yourself a bit of a challenge in writing each chapter from a different character's point of view, because you had to nail that from a different point of view, also in first person, because I realize other people have read this. So, and each chapter does speak to the character that it is portraying really well, which is hard to do. I mean, it's hard to do first person with one character through a book, and you've done it with two, so it's amazing. Yeah,
I like how Hoya designed it too. So you've got at the top of each chapter, you've got, so like, I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but like there, that's Tui and that's Kai, and then the next one, Kai would be bolded.
Yeah,
so I quite like that.
It's a nice.
And can we say how sexy this is? Oh,
thank you. You know why I did that? Okay, so I had a choice between red or purple, and I loved the purple because it looked so beautiful with the cover, but there was no reason behind it. Like the only reason that I wanted purple was because I love Prince, and that would be really embarrassing when people go, why did you do it as purple? Because I love Prince. But I thought red, because red is symbolic of our red ochre. And then this way, if you're reading this book, like red ochre in the book is sort of an anti-magic agent.
yes.
So if you're reading this, then you sort of taking away the sacredness of talking about Rarohenga and making it noir, you know, within
I
your
love that. So this then becomes that ochre
that line.
border, which is
I know,
amazing.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
Also, it contrasts really nicely with the cover too. Like,
Yeah, it does.
aesthetically, it's very pleasing.
It picks up these lovely red bits.
It does, yeah.
But purple would have been cool, you know, because of Prince. But
I probably would have picked purple because purple, but yeah, good choice.
So your next book about the Korimako can have the purple.
Purple.
Yes, it could.
We'll just find another reason for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's poro berries or something.
Yes, it could. It could
We'll
be.
workshop this later on.
All right, let's talk about it.
Cool. So last question, and then we'll wrap things up. So what are your favorite myths? Or pūrākau, really, our histories. What are your favorite ones?
I mean, I have to say Hatupatu and Kurungatuku because
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah.
I've been living with that for my life.
Yeah.
But I also really like the creation story. Like the Rangi and Papa, I just really love that kind of the love they have for each other, but they need to separate to let the world be. They don't do it, you know, happily to begin with, but yeah, to let their children thrive, they need to make this huge sacrifice, which I think is beautiful and heartbreaking too. But
it is heartbreaking, yeah. I have to go dark and say I really love when Hinunui Te Po crushed Maui. Yeah, okay, really quite fond of that one. There's also a story that I was told, but I don't know if it's real or not, and I can't find the stories about it. But up on the Kaitaki Ranges up near the mountain, there's a woman. You can only see her from the other side. From where I grew up, you could see her lying down on top of the ranges, and I don't know, I want to know what that story is, but I don't know it. And I haven't been able to find anyone who knows it either. So, but I was told there was a woman there, and now I just need the rest of the story.
maybe you
I may have to write it.
Yeah, that's right.
Might need to. Yeah, probably. But yeah, maybe one day I'll be able to figure out or find out what that's about. Yeah. Maybe one day she'll wake up. go walking. You never know. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I love our legend of Taranaki, who got into a fight over a woman and then
Oh,
went off, and now it's just waiting, and one day he will return. Yeah,
he's more handsome.
He's
He might
so
not have won, but he's more
handsome.
handsome.
Well,
He's
okay,
really
yeah.
beautiful.
I do have to. Don't tell Tongariro, but yes, he is. I don't know.
Quite hot for a Maunga. Yeah. And I also really love the Rona story, you know. I just love the harassed mother, you know. I bet she was glad to go, to be honest.
Bit of a holiday.
Yeah. With their children going, Mom.
Bye.
Yeah.
That would be a cool one for someone to write as well. Rona.
Yeah.
Rewrite.
Whose turn is it?
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I think that's the end of our kōrero for today. Whānau, was there anything else that you wanted to add, Steph, before we finish up?
Oh, I just wanted to say thanks for coming, everybody. That's really nice that you consented to be a part of the launch. It's my first virtual launch. I don't know if it's a thing. Maybe it will become a thing, you know. So I got a lot out of it. I really enjoyed our kōrero. It's really nice hanging with you, babes.
Yeah, it's a good way to spend time.
A little pluggy thing and say that you can buy this
at
korea.co.nz. And Steph, you have a code.
Yeah, do the code.
Yeah. Oh, Ataria, do you have it? Because I can't find the thing.
Yes. So everyone, a week from today, we've got a special promo code to get 10% off falling into Rarohenga huia.co.nz, and the code is Rarohenga 10. Rarohenga 10 is the code. 10% off. Yeah.
And when this video goes live, it'll be available then.
A week from then.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Buy one for your mum and your kids.
Christmas is coming.
Kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of
Get that Christmas shopping done early.
it's sort of like for the young teenagers in your life, like 12 and up.
Yeah.
Oh, mind you, my son, he's 10 and he read it. So, and he really liked it. So, yeah.
And for the young at heart as well.
Yeah. And for the young at heart.
Yeah. Children of all ages.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Say? Yeah. Everyone.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you to all of our kai kōrero. Thank you, Steph. Thank you, Whiti. Thank you, Cassie. That was really beautiful kōrero. I got a lot out of it, and there were a lot of takeaways, I think, for everyone who's joined us as well. Kia koutou kua whakapiri mai mō te whakarewanga. To all of you who have joined this virtual book launch on behalf of Huia Publishers and Steph Matuku, we thank you for joining us.